The lore of Five Nights at Freddy, Sister location can be understood as the point where the series fully abandons ambiguity as a protective veil and instead uses it as a weapon. Earlier entries relied heavily on implication, unreliable fragments, and environmental storytelling that allowed multiple interpretations to coexist. Sister location still uses fragmentation, but the fragments now point decisively toward intention. This is a story not just about haunted machines, but about systems built to exploit death, grief, and consciousness. It reframes the entire mythos as one driven by design rather than accident, and that shift fundamentally changes how every earlier and later event can be interpreted. The underground facility is the most important symbol in the game's lore. Its existence alone implies a level of secrecy and planning that exceeds anything previously suggested. This is not a forgotten restaurant or an abandoned attraction. It is an active, maintained complex hidden beneath the surface of the world. The descent into it mirrors a descent into moral rot. Every elevator ride downward reinforces the idea that the truth of this universe is buried intentionally, hidden from public view. The facility is clean, orderly, and procedural, which makes it more disturbing than decay. It suggests that horror thrives not in chaos but in structure. Violence here is not spontaneous, it is scheduled. The animatronics housed in the facility redefine what animatronics mean within the series. These are not mascots that became vessels for tragedy after the fact. They are machines designed from the outset with concealed mechanisms, advanced mobility, and behavioral programming that enables manipulation. The idea that they were built to lure children directly reframes the narrative from haunting to predation. This implies a world where murder was not just committed, but optimized. The animatronics, cheerful voices, and polished performances function as camouflage, turning the aesthetics of childhood joy into tools of harm. This inversion of innocence is central to the game's thematic horror. Circus Baby's role is especially significant because she embodies the collision between emotional intelligence and mechanical purpose. Her voice is calm, almost therapeutic, and she often positions herself as a guide or protector. Yet her origin story reveals that she is intimately aware of her role in a child's death. The fact that she can describe the event in detail, while also expressing regret and confusion, suggests that the consciousness within her is not simply mimicking emotion but experiencing it. This places her in a tragic liminal state, both victim and weapon. She did not choose her function, but she must live with its consequences, locked inside a form that cannot forget. Ballora adds another layer to the lore by introducing themes of absence and mourning. Her movements are graceful, but her presence is ghost-like, as though she represents something lost rather than something alive. Many interpretations link her to a maternal figure, and whether literal or symbolic, this connection reinforces the idea that the facility is filled not just with machines, but with echoes of broken relationships. Ballora's song, soft and haunting, contrasts with the harsh industrial environment, suggesting memory trying to survive inside something that was never meant to nurture it. The daily tasks assigned to the player reinforce the dehumanization at the core of the story. The player is not asked to survive, they are asked to comply. Instructions are given by a synthetic voice that treats danger as routine and suffering as an acceptable byproduct of operations. This normalization of risk and pain implies that many before the protagonist have already been lost, reduced to statistics rather than individuals. The facility does not adapt to protect humans. Humans are expected to adapt to survive the machines. This reversal of hierarchy is subtle but crucial to understanding the lore's worldview. The introduction of Enid marks the moment when the animatronics transcend their individual roles and become something fundamentally new. Enid is not just a monster, it is a collective intelligence born from confinement. Its existence implies that the animatronics have been aware of their imprisonment for a long time and have been waiting for an opportunity. Their cooperation suggests shared suffering and shared purpose, turning them into something closer to a community than a set of antagonists. This is deeply unsettling because it reframes the machines as oppressed entities whose violence is reactive rather than random. The use of the protagonist's body as a disguise is one of the most disturbing ideas in the series because it collapses the boundary between human and machine completely. The human form is reduced to utility, stripped of identity and agency. This act mirrors what happened to the children in earlier stories, but with a crucial difference: the protagonist is aware. The horror is no longer about sudden death, but prolonged violation. The fact that the protagonist continues to function afterward implies that whatever animates the machines can also sustain a human body beyond its natural limits, further blurring the line between life and undeath. This leads directly into the game's exploration of legacy and inheritance. The protagonist's implied connection to William Afton transforms the narrative into a familial tragedy. The descent into the facility can be read as an attempt to confront or repair the damage caused by a parent's obsession. Yet the outcome suggests that such damage cannot be undone without cost. Survival itself becomes a curse, binding the protagonist permanently to the horrors they sought to understand. The sins of the father are not merely remembered, they are lived. William Afton's presence looms over every aspect of the law, even when he is not directly mentioned. Sister Location portrays him as someone who moved beyond murder into experimentation, someone less interested in death itself than in what comes after it. The facility's design suggests a desire to study, contain, and replicate whatever force allows consciousness to persist beyond the body. This obsession reframes the supernatural elements of the series as the unintended consequences of a deliberate attempt to control immortality. In this light, the haunting is not the mystery, it is the result. Ultimately, Five Nights at Freddy, Sister Location is about the collapse of boundaries between life and death, machine and human, parent and child, victim and perpetrator. It presents a world where horror is not accidental or chaotic, but engineered and maintained. The true terror of the game lies not in being hunted, but in realizing that everything happening is the logical outcome of choices made long ago. The underground facility is not hiding monsters, it is hiding responsibility. And by forcing the player to descend into it, the game makes them confront the idea that some horrors are not meant to be escaped, only understood after it is too late. The timeline placement of Five Nights at Freddy, Sister Location is a critical aspect of understanding its lore, as it bridges events from the earlier animatronic tragedies to the later consequences that haunt the Afton family. Unlike the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza locations, which are set in decaying restaurants and rely on retro 1980s 1990s aesthetics, Sister Location is a deliberate departure in both environment and chronology. The game clearly takes place after multiple murders and incidents associated with William Afton's experiments, but before certain later events in the franchise, making it a pivotal turning point in the series' timeline. The facility itself, often referred to as Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, is an underground complex operating in secret. Its existence implies that previous restaurant incidents, such as the missing children murders and the hauntings that occurred at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, have already taken place. The animatronics here, particularly Circus Baby, Funtime Freddy, Ballora and Funtime Foxy, are designed with knowledge of earlier failures. For instance, Circus Baby's mechanism to capture a child safely, from a human engineering perspective, suggests that the earlier, more chaotic animatronics either malfunctioned or were not fully under Afton's control. In other words, Sister Location represents a later stage in William Afton's experimentation. He has moved from creating accidental dangers in public-facing pizzerias to highly controlled, private, and deadly machines designed for precision. Chronologically, the game takes place after the initial Freddy Fazbear's Pizza incidents of the 1980s and 1990s, which are depicted in the first few games as haunted and abandoned locations. Sister Location is not tied to a public-facing restaurant. It is underground, hidden, and functional in a way the earlier establishments were not. This timing suggests that William Afton has refined both his animatronic technology and his methods of testing, moving from the mistakes of public exposure to a controlled environment where he can manipulate children and employees with minimal oversight. The protagonist's implied identity as a member of the Afton family also helps situate the game within the broader timeline. The player appears to be Michael Afton, the son of William, who is sent to this facility, possibly to investigate or undo his father's legacy. This would mean that Sister Location occurs after the events that led to the Afton family's fracturing, but before the final consequences, such as Michael's eventual fate in later installments. In that sense, the game is a narrative bridge. It explains how the Afton experiments escalate, how the animatronics evolve into more sophisticated and dangerous forms, and how the human characters begin to suffer the long-term consequences of William Afton's obsession. Additionally, Enid's plan to escape using the protagonist's body has long-term implications for the timeline. It sets up the transition from animatronic-centered horror to the fusion of human and machine that becomes central in later narratives. By surviving, albeit in a grotesque, body-altered state, Michael Afton becomes a living consequence of the underground facility's events, linking Sister Location directly to the timeline of the later games that explore both the haunted remnants of the Fazbear locations and the Afton family's curse. In summary, Sister Location sits chronologically after the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza tragedies and before the ultimate confrontations with the Afton family and the haunted animatronics in later installments. It represents both a technological and narrative evolution. The experiments have grown more sophisticated, the stakes more personal, and the horrors more intimate. By situating the game in this post-incident but pre-conclusion period, it functions as the critical midpoint in the series' timeline, linking past horrors to the eventual unraveling of William Afton's legacy and the tragic consequences for his family.